How many of y'all have, how many of y'all like me worked all week, got paid on Friday and was broke on Monday? Any of y'all lived a lifestyle like that? What we're going to do, y'all, is we're going to start taping. We got a website that we're building, and hopefully it'll get in a lot of treatment centers and a lot of places, different places around the country, so people that can hear about this 12-step movement and how powerful the 12 steps are, because God, through the 12 steps have been used to transform my life. I no longer think the way I used to think or act the way I used to act. And when you think about the third step prayer, one of the things we do is we ask God to relieve us from the bondage of self. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to be in bondage, and we're tired of being a victim. How many of y'all tired of being in a bondage? How many of y'all tired of being a victim? How many of us want to get free on the inside? So that's one of our deeper objectives, to get free on the inside, to have peace of mind, have peace with ourselves, have peace with our fellow travelers, and have peace with God. And so, if you're anything like I was, I worked all week long, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 hours a week. I've worked hard all my life. And when I'd get paid, the next thing I found out that I would be broke. And then I would have to go around and start borrowing money so I could get my electricity paid, and so I could get my water bill paid, and so I could get my phone hooked back up or whatever, so I could get gas in my car, or so I could buy milk or bread for my family at home. I've got a wife of over 42 years who just celebrated 20 years sobriety. I've got a son that's 39 years old that just celebrated 17 years sobriety. I got a brother that will celebrate 14 years of sobriety in December if he makes it. I'm a middle son of 5 boys, and my mom has passed. She left this old world as we know it in 2000. She died of a terrible disease called Alzheimer's. My dad left this old world in 2007. And what I want to say is time is a gift. And we've all had our near-death experiences. And you can't go back and turn back the hand of time. So we learn how to accept what is, let go of what was, and have faith in what will be. And so what we want to talk about is reality. And the water that's flowed under the bridge is flowed under the bridge. And you can't unscramble scrambled eggs. And so what you've done, you've done. So what I do when I come to these places is I present myself as being a coach. And I want all of us to look at it as like our locker room time. All coaches go to the locker room at halftime. And what we do is we review our films. And what we want to do is we want to capitalize on the mistakes that we have made and quit duplicating the same old mistakes, take advantage of our mistakes, and quit letting them take advantage of us. Does that sound like a good game plan? We got to recognize our weaknesses. We got to recognize our strength. And we also review films and we recognize the strength of the opposition team too, don't we? And we also want to recognize their weaknesses. So it's like a ball game. So when you put it from the worldly perspective, then we're going to transfer it over into a spiritual perspective. And so I've got 3 daughters and 1 son. I'm going to go ahead and lay this out there. Each one of them have a different understanding of old dad. Each one of them have a different conception of old dad. Their understanding and their conceptions will never be the same in this walk of life. But I'm still dad, and they still my children. And the same principle applies to each and every one of us. None of us have the exact same conception of God. None of us have the exact same understanding of God. But God is still God. And we are his pride and joy in this walk of life. Mankind is. So the realities of life for every man, woman, and child, regardless of race, creed, or color, it's not about that. Whatever we feed our mind or whatever we focus on, we become. And what we become, we transmit. And what we transmit, we receive. So my life began to change, free on the inside, when I started focusing on what I needed to be doing or not doing, rather than focusing on what others ought to be doing or not doing. So as long as I'm focusing on what others ought to be doing or not doing, I'm taking my eyes off the only thing that I can do anything about. And I can't do anything about me without the help of God. Matter of fact, the big book says we had to have God's help. So we're going to cover a lot of stuff this morning. And I want to encourage you to just be open-minded. A lot of times you have to throw a bunch of lifetime conceptions out the window and have some new conceptions, some new motives that begin to dominate our life so we won't be controlled by the nature of darkness. And we're going to talk about the nature of darkness versus the nature of light in simplicity. And so on page 125 in the 12 and 12, it says, with each passing day of our lives, may every one of us sense more deeply the inner meaning of a simple prayer. God grant us the serenity. That sounds like a gift, doesn't it? And what are we wanting to be granted? Peace of mind. To do what? Accept the things we cannot change. I can tell you this, I believe this with all my heart. You can't change this. Whatever you focus on or whatever you feed your mind, there's a food plot. You become, and how you look at it, we're going to get into that, makes all the difference in the world. So this prayer, this is a very deep, rich, and meaningful prayer. We're asking God to grant us the peace to accept the things we cannot change. We cannot change all the mistakes we made in the first half of the game. We can try to repair the damage. We're praying for courage to change the things we can, the way we look at life, our priorities in the game of life, our ambitions, our objectives, our goals, our values, what motivates us to say and do what we do, and those desires that come from within. So we got the natural desires that come from our God-given instincts, and when we misuse them, they hurt us. They become our liabilities. They were designed to be our assets. Here's another thing we can't change. What you listen to, or who you listen to, has a whole lot to do with what goes on in this mind. Your hearing, what kind of music you listen to, what kind of stuff you watch on TV, what voices you listen to. Sometimes that old voice of what's the use will talk to you. And old what's the use wants you to catch an attitude. And it wants you to give up. Y'all know about the old voice of what's the use? It's just not working. Taste. I've tasted the good life. And it's a rich and satisfying life. And if you ever get a taste of it, you might like it, and you might love it, and you might want some more of it too. Touch. What we feel, how we feel. What we touch in the natural. What about that smell? Y'all know about them smells? And our sight, how we look at things, the courage to change the way I look at things. and the wisdom to know the difference between the things I can do something about and the things I can't do anything about, because as long as you're focusing on what other people are doing or not doing, you don't have the power to change them anyway. But if you're focusing on what they ought to be doing or what they ought not be doing, what's that doing to your mind? Fair question? So we want to have the godly wisdom versus the worldly wisdom. A lot of times we'll use the worldly wisdom and we think we're so clever and so crafty, and we're going to manipulate others to meet our own ungodly desires. Does that make sense? So y'all say this prayer with me. It's a we version of the serenity prayer. Y'all ready? Serenity prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things that we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. One day at a time. All right, I want y'all to go to page 317 in the big book. I want to talk about the power of choice. I believe everything boils around that one word, choices. 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 How many of y'all, when y'all were little, you were made to do this and made to do that by maybe your moms and dads? See, when I was growing up, going to church was not a choice for me. It was something we did. Going out and working in the fields was not a choice for me. It was something we did. I'm a sharecropper's son from north central Mississippi. In the eyes of the world, probably a nobody. But in the eyes of God, I'm a somebody. In the eyes of God, every man, woman, and child, regardless of race, creed, or color, is important to him. How many of y'all believe that? And so, in the third paragraph on page 317, when I am willing to do the right thing, willingness is a big key. I am rewarded with an inner peace. How many of y'all want that inner peace? No amount of liquor, no amount of drugs, no amount of sex, no amount of nothing could ever provide it. When I'm unwilling to do the right thing, I become restless, irritable, and discontented. And what people like us do when we become restless, irritable, or discontented, we try to go to some kind of unhealthy means so we won't feel restless, irritable, and discontented. Y'all agree with that? So what we want to do is we want to start focusing on the positive things instead of focusing on the negative things. And so go to page 59 in the big book. Look at the fifth step, where it says, admit it to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature. Now, this nature has a plan and a purpose for us. And what we want to do is we want to expose the nature by uncovering and discovering the garbage that's inside us. And it's the nature of our wrongs. If it's the nature of our wrongs, then we can rest assured it's not the nature of light, but it's the nature of darkness. Can we agree with that? So this side over here has got a plan and a purpose. This side over here It's got a plan and a purpose. This side over here wants us to have a rich and satisfying life. This side over here wants us to be miserably ineffective. Does that make sense? This side over here wants to steal our peace of mind, and it's going to use the spirit of fear to do that. The fear of the unknown. Or maybe us being afraid of our reputation. One of the promises in the book is fear, people, and of economic insecurity will leave us. But it says sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. And so many people are afraid of their reputation. They're afraid of what people think about them. And what's important to me today is what I know about me and what God knows about me, and what other people think about me is not personal between me and them. That's between them and God. So I don't let it be personal anymore. I didn't know how to do that for a long period of time. In the big book, on page 68, we're not going to go there right now. I'm just going to cross-reference it. It says, fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. So this side over here wants to steal your peace of mind, and it wants to use your family members. Have y'all ever let a family member, has a family member ever hurt you in some kind of way that stole your peace of mind? Has a friend ever hurt you in some kind of way that stole your peace of mind? Have your circumstances ever stolen your peace of mind? This side over here wants to kill us. In the big book on page 62, it says we must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. And it says the wrongdoings of others, fancy real, have power to actually kill. It's the wrongdoings of others, but it's really the nature that's operating behind the scenes. Does that make sense? And it said this side over here wants to destroy us. Big book page 64 says resentment's the number one offender. It destroys. It says it's more alcoholic, but I believe it destroys mankind. It destroys us through our resentments. And we get those resentments because of our anger. Does that make sense? So what we want to do is we don't want to let this dark side outsmart us anymore, so we got the nature of darkness versus the nature of light. Now go to the 12 and 12, page 15. Actually, it don't have a page number on it, but it's the forward to the 12 and 12. Where he says AA's 12 steps. Y'all see that? Third paragraph. AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature, which is the nature of the light side, or the nature of God, if you will, which is practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession, and you fill in the blank. Y'all see that? Can expel the obsession, it says to drink, and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. So what we want to do is we want to become happily and usefully whole. That's one of our objectives. That's one of our priorities, or what our priorities should be. Y'all agree? No? Flip over to page 98. So what we do is we start taking our own inventory instead of taking everybody else's inventory. And in reality, we start focusing on what we ought to be doing or not be doing instead of focusing on what everybody else ought to be doing or not doing. And we start doing some self-searching. We start doing some self-examination. And we try to do that on a daily basis. In the second paragraph on page 98, we have seen, this is an eye-opening experience, self-searching is the means. So we're going to be given the means and the method to overcome the power of darkness. Self-searching is the means by which we bring new vision. So we're going to get us a new pair of glasses. In other words, instead of being caught up into all this worldly stuff, we want to break the old habits and want the transformation to take place from the worldly perspective to the spiritual perspective. Does that make sense? So we want to break the old habits and we want to develop some new habits, and we don't want to be conformed any longer to the patterns of this world, but we want to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. In other words, we want to start looking at things, instead of looking at things from a negative or unhealthy point of view, we want to start looking at things from a positive or healthy point of view. In other words, we're going to start looking at things not just from the worldly angle, but we're going to start looking at things from the spiritual angle. And the 12 and 12 talks about that. On page 109. And the big book talks about the worldly angle on page 66. Anyway, let's stay right here. Let's stay right here for a minute. Okay, I'm just throwing that stuff up there for you to reference later on. Okay. We have seen self-searching is the means by which we bring new vision. We take new action so we can get new grace to bear upon the dark and negative side, that's this side over here, of our natures plural. So we got two natures inside us, and both of them oppose each other. Does that make sense? Y'all ever seen that commercial, that Capital One commercial? What's in your wallet? Okay? So we want to do some self-searching, and we want to ask ourselves, what's in our spiritual account? So we got debits and credits. So we go through these 12 steps so we can uncover and discover and discard the debits so we can get out of the red so we can get into black. Now, when you look at it from a worldly point of view, if we don't put any credits in the bank account and we steady making withdrawals, we go busted over here, but our problem is we keep on spending. Y'all agree with that? And the same principle applies in the spiritual realm. This nature over here wants us to have love, joy, peace, what else?
Patience.
How much? Patience. What else? Kindness. This side over here wants us to have gentleness. What else? Goodness. What else? What? Compassion. Understanding. Humility, truth, freedom, and the only way to get this is through that key word right there, obedience. Now go to page 174 in the 12 and 12. How many of y'all believe that these are some qualities that this nature wants us to have? And anybody could increase that list. So on page 174 in the 12 and 12, in the paragraph that starts off with, at this juncture, y'all see that? Drop 7 lines down. And I want y'all to think about this statement. Rarely we've seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Y'all ever heard that before? Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. So the 7th line down, it says, and let it be real personal to you, because it is real personal. Unless each AA member, y'all see that? Y'all see how personal it is? Unless each AA member follows to the best of his ability. Okay? Well, then we read in how it works, we're naturally incapable, which means the natural man don't have the ability to do it. And on page 62, it says we must be rid of this selfishness, we must, or it kills us, and there seems no way of getting rid of it without God's aid. As a matter of fact, it says we had to have God's help. So God is our helper. So we offer ourselves to God to build with us and to do with us. And so unless each AA member follows to the best of his ability our suggested 12 steps to recovery, almost certainly signs his own death warrant. Now that don't sound too good, does it? Then it says his drunkenness and disillusionments are not penalties inflicted by people in authority. They result from his personal, what's that next word? Disobedience. So how do we stay in bondage? We stay in bondage by disobedience. We get free this way. His drunkenness and disillusionments are not penalties inflicted by people in authority. They result from his personal disobedience to spiritual principles. So this side over here don't want you to be forgiving, but this side over here does. This side over here wants you to harbor grudges, and it wants you to seek revenge. This side over here wants you to be bitter, wants you to be disappointed, because it wants to pull you back into disillusionments. And all this is recorded in our literature. We don't have time to go to all these places where all this stuff is written, but it's written in our literature. And a lot of the stuff that's written in our literature didn't come up in 1935 or 1939. They are ancient words. Matter of fact, it talks about the ancient words, freely you have received, freely give, on this page on 166. So we give of ourselves, which is the sacrificial spirit, symbolic for anonymity. And so look at the next paragraph. Third line down, so we do obey spiritual principles, first because we must, and ultimately because we love the kind of life such obedience brings. Great suffering and great love are our disciplinarians, and we need no others. So discipline is the key word. So when the coach goes into the locker room at halftime, he stresses discipline, discipline, discipline. It takes discipline for you to focus on your own assignment. When I was growing up, my desire and my goal in life was to be a ball player. I loved sports. I wanted to be a ball player. I wanted to be a coach. And God blessed me with some talents and gifts. In 1970, I graduated high school, outstanding high school athlete according to the coaches. Played linebacker on the football team, played end on the football team, played on all the special teams. I was point guard on the basketball team, and I was starting pitcher on the baseball team. But in the spring of 1970, I started drinking a little beer, went to a crap game, had $4 in my pocket. My buddy had $15 in his pocket, and we broke that crap game and won $600, and that changed my lifestyle. So you go back and look over your scorecard and see what changed your lifestyle. How did you start going down the wrong track? How did you get led down that wrong track? And then money became my God, because I used to pick cotton for $3 a hundred, and I hoed cotton for $2 a day and $3 a day after I got on up a little bit bigger. And me and my three brothers would haul hay, and we would get paid a penny a bale. But we worked hard, and we could put 1,000 bales of hay up a day, and we'd make $10 a day, and that's a lot of money for us. And then when you take $4 and you go into a crap game and you cut the pie and $300, man, that looked pretty appealing to this old country boy. So I put my ladder on that materialistic wall of success, and I started a lifestyle that led me in a battlefield, and I became a prisoner of spiritual warfare, and I didn't know how to get out from under it. And I really didn't even know how I got caught up in the lifestyle until I came in contact with a 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then I started reflecting back, and I started reviewing my scorecard. I went ahead and went to school, went to Northwest Junior College, where I was supposed to play sports, and I took a 1-year degree in welding, 2-year degree in mechanical technology, and at the ripe old age of 20 years old, I had 2 associate's degrees from colleges and a high school diploma, and I moved to Memphis, Tennessee, which was my foreign region. And I got me a job at the Illinois Central Gulf Railroad, and I kept my gambling started escalating. I started betting ball games. I started booking ball games, and the next thing you know, I got married to a woman that had a little girl that was 5 years old and a little girl that was 2 years old. And just overnight, I became a father. And a couple of years later, my son was born, and And I was working at the railroad, and in 1979, I bought my wife a Thunderbird off the showroom floor. I paid $4,000 for a van. I was about 28 years old or something like that. And I had that van customized, and all of a sudden the wheel run off. Y'all know about the wheel running off? I totaled the Thunderbird down in Memphis, got carried to 201 Poplar. I gave the van to the bookie. I lost about $50,000 over about a 3-month period of time. And I was angry and mad. And this dark side that I'm fixing to describe when we come off a break had a big hook in me and started reeling me in. And I was angry, mad, resentful at my circumstances, my reputation that I had built up was out the window. From the outside looking in, everybody thought this old country boy went up north to Memphis, Tennessee, and really had it going on. My stay-at-home wife and my kids' stay-at-home mom had to go to work in Memphis, Tennessee. She went to work for a temporary service, got to go to Federal Express. 2 of my brothers down in Oxford, Mississippi, bought a $300 car, that old Chevrolet Impala that the cats had been living in for 3 years. And that Thunderbird got replaced by that Impala Chevrolet. And my wife drove that car to and from Federal Express from down in Mississippi for over a year. Do you think my wife had a resentment toward me? Do you think I placed myself in a position for that to take place? But all I could do is zero in on the collision course. I couldn't see how the ball got started years before, when I started drinking that beer and drinking that whiskey and went to that crap game. And so years down the road, the collision course took place, and I isolated that case. Y'all understand that? And so we start isolating our cases, and we start presenting our cases to our friends. And we become a victim of the power of darkness, and we start feeling sorry for ourselves, and we start being consumed with the anger and the depression and the resentments and the bitterness and the disappointments. And then we start feeding and fanning and nurturing that side, which is the dark side. And the more we feed it, fan it, and nurture it, we become it. And when we become it, we transmit it. And we start taking all that stuff out on our family members, our friends, and society. And we don't want to be like that anymore. What I personally believe is a picture is better than 1,000 words. So what we try to do is, and I believe if you put 1,000 words with a picture, you end up with a Polaroid. So what we're trying to do is paint a picture about the realities of life. Can y'all see how that dark side got a hook in me? I want to talk about our debits just a little bit. Pride. Fear. What God revealed to me is, through the 12 steps, is most people have got an evil chain inside them. I'm going to say this side over here is an evil, corroding chain. And those chain links have got names. We want to talk about the awareness of the strategies of the power of darkness. Sound like a plan? And it's going to go back to priorities. Worldly versus spiritual. Ambitions. Worldly versus spiritual. Remember the man on page 32 that was ambitious to succeed in life? And he put all his stock in this materialistic world, and he built this materialistic empire. And at the age of 55, he retired, out come the carpet slippers. A couple of months, he was in the nut house. In 4 years, he was dead, and all the means that money could buy was at his disposal. But money can't buy the gift that's being offered to y'all. Money can't buy it, the world can't give it. But the beauty of that is, once you get it, once you receive this gift, the world can't take it away. So what I didn't know is, what I was feeding my mind, or what I was focusing on, I was becoming. It was a process, and what I became, I transmitted, and what I transmitted, I received. Y'all ever heard what goes around comes around? Well, that's the realities of life. And I was transmitting it within my circle of influence. And I had no idea that I was being an agent or representative for this side over here. And so I kept feeding those chain links. Pride, fear, greed, lust. We don't just lust for romance, we lust for power. We lust for money. We lust for prestige. It comes in several different forms. I didn't get, or I lost, or I gave away what I thought was so important in my life, the materialistic world. Y'all know about having that in the forefront of your mind? And then I got very resentful. And I was resentful at my circumstances. I was resentful because I had lost my materialistic empire that I thought was so valuable to me. And then I developed some grudges. I felt lonely. I was fearful. I started feeling sorry for myself. I fell into the depths of self-pity. And I worked that much harder to get my materialistic empire back. And it never has come back. I was depressed. And I would go to that false sense of security and bury myself in the depths of that bottle or some other kind of unhealthy means to bring me some kind of false sense of security so I wouldn't have to feel what I was feeling. Y'all know anything about that? And what I didn't know then that I know today is I was misusing all these God-given instincts that the 12 and 12 so masterly lays out from page 42 on. It talks about precisely and exactly how mankind gets outsmarted by the misuse of our instincts. And those instincts become our liabilities because I put my faith in all the wrong things for all the wrong reasons for too long a period of time. I put my faith in my ability instead of the one who gave me the ability. I put my faith in my talents and my gifts instead of the one who gave me my talents and my gifts. Any of y'all know anything about that? So I was on the wrong track. And I stayed on that wrong track for a long period of time. And my problem was I didn't know how not to be on that track until I come in contact with the 12 steps. And I tried real hard from the age of 33. I'm an old prodigal son. I tried to turn my life around at the church house, but I wasn't able to do it there. And I would go down and request those prayers, and I would go to the Sunday morning people, and I'd go to the Sunday night people, and I'd go to the Wednesday night people, and I was introduced to the 12-step program in 1991, and they give me this big book, and they give me this 12 and 12, and they told me that I needed to read, study, and apply what was in this literature to my life. Said that's how we turned our life around, and that's how we believe you'll turn your life around if you will do what it suggests you do in this program. And what I didn't know about the program then is the program was designed to reprogram my thinking, and then I found out through the in-depth study who the programmer was for the program. And it's a tradition too, a loving God, that he expresses himself through well-informed people. It says our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. So people lead by example. And in the 12 and 12 on 124, it says true leadership we find depends upon able example and not upon vain displays of power or glory. So I had some vain displays of power through the materialistic world, and I was seeking the vain glory. The way Dr. Bob put it in the co-founder's pamphlet, it says, check me out, boys, pretty good, huh? And this dark side had me. And my family paid a big price for my low-class lifestyle. My friends paid a big price for my low-class lifestyle. Society paid a big price for my low-class lifestyle. And this social distinction, this social status, it talks about it on page 70 in the 12 and 12 says nearly everything, on page 70 it says nearly everything you hear highlights man's pride and his accomplishments. Look what I've done. Look what I've done. Look what I've done. And so what we want to do is we want to get down to the brass tacks, and we want to get down to the basics, and we want to know, we want to find out the how and why of the spiritual life and how we live it. So I'm going to encourage y'all to go to page 62 in the big book. And here's what God revealed to me through the 12 steps. When I try to arrange life to suit myself, and I try to arrange all the players to do what I think they ought to be doing as I see it to my way of thinking, and it don't happen or go down the way I think, I end up being controlled by the dark side. And so what God revealed to me about these names of the chain links, is the more I fed Mr. Pride, the stronger that chain link became. And then it was coupled with fear. And I kept feeding that old spirit of fear and all that old greed and lust and anger and bitterness and selfishness and dishonesty, resentments, grudges, self-pity. No wonder I was depressed. You know why I was depressed and I didn't know? I was a prisoner of spiritual warfare. Because I thought I knew what you ought to be doing, when you ought to be doing it, and how you ought to be doing it. Any of y'all know about that mindset? Well, the bottom, and I'm going to ask you a question. Why when you want to overcome something that's stealing your peace of mind? Why when you want to get rid of something that's killing you? And why when you want to get rid of something that's destroying you from the inside out? So we got the means and the method to do it, but it takes a commitment. The bottom of page 62 in the big book, it says, this is the how and why of it. We're in the chapter of how it works. And it talks about a program, which is a plan of action that can help us uncover and discover the garbage that's inside us and replace it with the good. So we're going through this learning process where it says this is the how and why of it. Right up above it, it says we had to have God's help. Y'all see that? Here's the how part. This is my understanding. First of all, we had to quit playing God. Quit thinking you know what everybody ought to be doing, when they ought to be doing it, and how they ought to be doing it, and start focusing on what you need to be doing or not doing. Sound like a good game plan? And the reason we need to do that is because it didn't work. So our ideas don't work. So hold your finger on page 62 and back up to 52. So we have a choice. When we saw others, y'all see that? Solve their problems. How many of y'all got a bunch of problems you need to solve? How many of y'all believe that every problem presents an opportunity for both spiritual forces? And how you look at it makes all the difference in the world. If you look at a problem as an opportunity or a stepping stone for you to get victory over whatever your problem is, so that victory over the problem can be a witness for those that you can help of His power, His love, and His way of life, which is the third step prayer. When we saw others solve their problems by a simple reliance upon the Spirit of the universe. Y'all see that? It's capitalized. We had to stop doubting the power of God. Our ideas did not work, but the God idea did. So our ideas don't work. Playing God don't work. Back up to page 13. I thought we were going to 62, but we'll come back there. Page 13, this is Ebby, who had come in contact with the 6 steps. He lays them out there to Bill Wilson. And he makes a promise to Bill, and the only way Ebby can make this promise to Bill is because he has experienced it, okay? Or he can't make this promise. That's my belief. My friend promised when these things were done, he's talking about going through the steps, I would enter a new relationship with my Creator. That's the vertical relationship. How many of y'all need to enter a new relationship with your Creator? My friend promised when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator, and that I would have the elements of a way of living which answered, what's that next word? All my problems. And here's what the elements are. The first element is about step 2, and it's about being restored to sanity. And it's about belief in the power of God. So if you're having a hard time believing in the power of God, just believe that we believed. And start where you are. So it seems to be working when we saw others solve their problems by a simple reliance upon the Spirit of the universe. We had to stop doubting the power of God because our ideas haven't been working. How's that been working? How's your formula been working for you? What does your scorecard read when you review it? How much money have you squandered in your lifetime? The way I presented my case to the guy that was used to sponsor me in, I told him, I said, I'm not a liar and I'm not a thief. And he said, well, you're a liar and you're a thief. He said, if you hadn't lied to nobody else, you lied to yourself about how much you've been stealing. He said, I want you to think about how much money you've squandered in your lifetime. In reality, you've taken food off your family's table. You've taken clothes off your kids' back. You've taken shoes off their feet and vehicles out of their driveway. And buddy, when that mindset, it just started snowballing from there. And then later on, God put it on a spiritual perspective, and I thought about how many times I kept my poor old mama up all night long, praying for me, pacing the floor, my daddy, my brothers, my sisters, my wife, my children, and the list goes on. Wondering when they're going to get that phone call, wondering what kind of message was going to be on the other end of that phone call. And there's a lot of people that's got that phone call while this meeting has been going on this morning. Some of them have been expecting the phone calls. Others haven't. And people like us are taking other people's lives. And we're being used to steal their peace of mind. I ripped my mama's heart out. What about you? I ripped my daddy's heart out, but what I really did is I allowed this side over here to work through me to fulfill his purpose to steal, kill, and destroy their lives. Is that a revelation for y'all? It was a revelation for me. I never had thought of it to those depths. Then I thought about the collision courses that me and Mama would have when I would come home. And I could see those 3 little girls. And I could see my son with that fear, that old demon of fear just all over him, wondering what was fixing to take place. Y'all know anything about that? And I didn't have a clue. So I was willing to do something about it. And this guy helped me get honest with myself when he told me I was a liar and I was a thief. If I hadn't lied to nobody else, I'd lied to myself about how much I'd been stealing and in what ways I had been stealing. It says, belief in the power of God plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility to establish and maintain the new order of things. How many of y'all need to take on a new order of things? Were the essential requirements simple but not easy, a price had to be paid. It meant the destruction of self-centeredness. So I need to destroy this selfish, self-centered nature and use the means and the methods that's available to me by using the method of the coaches and start reviewing my film on a daily basis so I can do some self-examination and some self-searching and uncover and discover the garbage that's inside me, get rid of the debits and start increasing my credits. Because when I got here, my debit side was like a bowling ball and my credit side was probably like a BB. Now, through the means and the methods that I've been given through the 12 steps, I'm not in the red anymore. I'm in the black. This side over here don't control me. I'm not saying that it still don't have its way with me many times, way more times than I would like to admit, but it does not control me. I'm led by this side over here. And I learn daily to spot, admit, and correct what needs to be corrected inside me by the means and the methods that was so freely given to us through the 12-step program. Does that make sense? It says, simple but not easy, a price had to be paid. It meant the destruction of self-centeredness. Now, y'all look at this next line. I must turn in all things to the Father. Y'all see that capitalized? Y'all see it capitalized on page 14? Simple but not easy, a price had to be paid. It meant the destruction of self-centeredness. I must turn in all things to the Father of light. Y'all see that? Who presides over us all. So I don't have to turn anything over to nobody or no being because I've got free will, but if I want to be free on the inside, then I got to turn all things over to the Father of light. So if there's a Father of light, there must be a Father of darkness, right? And the Father of light operates in truth, and the Father of darkness operates in lies. That make sense? So when somebody wants to tell me that this new life that I'm trying to live is going to be so hard, it's just going to be so hard, I say, I'm not listening to that. I'm not going to receive that. Because the lifestyle that I lived was a hard lifestyle. Going to jails, wrecking cars, borrowing money, bumming money, calling people to get me out of jail, going through them one-horse towns with the speed limit 35 miles an hour, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you drunk and cooter brown, and you see a couple of guys in blue sitting over there in the little parking lot, and all of a sudden you driving down through there and you trying to go 35 miles an hour and you got one eye shut, and you look over there and you see them, and when I'm pulled in behind you, and your heart starts pounding, and you're looking in your rear view mirror, and you're looking down at your speedometer, and you get up to about 38 miles an hour, and you need to slow down. You drop down to about 30, and you got to speed back up. You get over in this left lane, you're going to turn left, and hoping they don't get behind you, and they pull in behind you. And every once in a while, you catch that blue light special. Then you got to call somebody to get you out of jail. So what was easy about the lifestyle that you lived? It was a mighty high price for a low-class lifestyle, and you're not the only one that paid the price. My mama paid the price. So did her brothers, and so did her brother and her sisters. My daddy paid the price. So did his brothers and his sisters. My brothers paid the price. My sister paid the price. My wife paid the price. So did her mom and daddy. So did her brother and her sister. So did my kids. So it was a mighty high price for a low-class lifestyle, was it not? So don't let nobody paint a picture in your mind that this is just going to be so hard. It's just going to be so hard. What's hard is destroying that selfish, self-centered nature that we've been feeding for all those years. So one of the first things we have to do is stop feeding it. And one of the first things we do is we smash the idea that we can ever pick up that poison and put that poison in our system that turns us into an unlovely creature. I can't tell y'all I don't know what it did to you, but I know what it did to me. it made me something that I was not created to be. I had the isms before I ever poured anything in on top of it. Did y'all? Now go back to page 62. This is the how. The first part is the how, and the second part is the why, based on my understanding of this literature. This is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God because it didn't work. That's a no-brainer. Here's the how. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. Here's why. He is the principal, first of importance, and we are his agents. Or we're his representatives. Now I'm going to ask you a question right now. Which side have you been representing with the lifestyle that you lived? It says he is the Father and we are his children. So now you got to ask yourself, if you like me, who's your daddy? The father of light or the father of darkness? And you got to make up your mind whose representative you want to be and whose team you want to play on. Because you're either going to be a player in this side or you're going to be a player on this side. And this is for the second half of the game. It says most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. So the archway to freedom, the pathway to freedom has been laid out for us. And what we have to do is follow it to the best of our ability with increasing skills, but it takes a commitment. Look at the top of page 63, where it says, when we sincerely took such a position. What is the position we're taking? I'm going to quit trying to control everybody else. I'm going to quit thinking I know what everybody else ought to be doing or ought not be doing. And I'm going to start focusing on what I need to be doing. Or I'm going to be focusing on what I don't need to be doing. Process of elimination. Make sense? When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer. Y'all see the capital letters? So who's my boss? I got a new employer. I'm going to start following his directions instead of mine or somebody else's. Being all powerful, he provided what we needed if we kept close to him, capitalized. Y'all look at all them capital letters. And performed his work well. Established on such a footing. Y'all know what a footing is? It's the outside perimeter that holds up the structure of the house. Y'all know what a keystone is? This book talks about a footing. It talks about a foundation. It talks about a keystone. It talks about a cornerstone. It talks about bedrock. I think it's pretty cool. I'm an old carpenter, so I know what all that terminology means. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans, our little designs. More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. So instead of being a consumer, we become a giver, and then when we do that, we set ourselves up to be a receiver. Does that make sense? More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. Here's the process. Look at the word as. As we felt new power flow in. If you hadn't felt that new power flow in, you stay with us and you'll be able to experience that new power flow in. And when it starts flowing in, you're going to know it's this side over here. And it's going to be driving out this side over here. And it's a process. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, all this, that as stuff is with increasing skills, okay? Means it's going to get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. As we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of His presence, which is the fourth dimension, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn. So when we get reborn, we enter the world of the Spirit. And we're going to talk about that in our next section. Okay, let's go back to page 63. Where it says we were now at step 3. Y'all see that? Many of us said to our Maker. Y'all notice Maker's capitalized? Y'all see it in the middle of the page? You know how we got to step 3? We accepted step 1 that we were powerless over. You fill in the blanks. That our life had become unmanageable. We didn't manage our time and money too good, did we? As we understood Him. I didn't understand that concept until I put it on a worldly perspective. My 3 daughters and my son, they each one have a different understanding of Dad. Always have, always will in this walk of life. They all have a different conception of Dad. Always have, always will in this walk of life. We just got through reading that He's the Father and we're His children. No two people on the face of the earth will ever have the same conception of God in this walk of life. None of us will have the exact same understanding of God in this walk of life. So you see the wisdom of why the literature was written the way it was, to meet people where they are. Y'all see that? So it says, God, I offer myself to Thee to build with me. At the end of the service manual, it says, freedom under God to grow in His likeness and image will ever be the quest of Alcoholics Anonymous. To a man, we believe that our freedom to serve is truly the freedom by which we live and have our being. Tradition 1 is about freedom. And we jealously guard the individual's right to think, talk, and act as he wishes. Don't let any individual, based on their judgment, take your freedom away from you. Do y'all hear me? We don't have to come under the authority of man's judgment. We come under the authority of our new employer, of our new director. He's the one that's calling the shots because he's the real coach. Okay? And we're all players in the game of life. It says, relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. So we want to be relieved from the bondage of self because we're tired of being a prisoner of spiritual warfare. Y'all agree? And the first thing we consider the common manifestations of self is the resentments, right here. And we find out that the resentment is what's destroying us because we're looking at it from a worldly angle instead of the spiritual angle, and we're zeroing in on the wrongs and not being able to see that it's the nature operating behind the scenes. Does that make sense? that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties. How many of us have a difficult time forgiving other people for what they've done? Well, if we'll start looking at it in the spiritual realm instead of the worldly realm, then maybe we can come up with this conclusion that they didn't know what they were doing when they hurt us the way they hurt us. Did you hurt a lot of people when you didn't know? So the old ancient word is, they don't know. Actually, the old ancient word is, forgive them, for they don't know. Actually, the old ancient word is Father. The concept at the bottom of 62, Father, forgive them, for they don't know. Did you know what you were doing? I didn't. Take away my difficulties, victory over them may bear witness. How many of y'all want to have victory over your difficulties? Not just so you can have victory over your difficulties, but so you can bear witness to those within your circle of influence. Family, friends, and society. Those that I would help with thy power. Y'all see that in capital letters? That's not my power, that's not your power, that's his power. Thy love in capital letters. That's not my love, that's not your love, that's his love. Thy way of life. May I do thy will always, one day at a time. So we come in contact with this new way of life, and it's a process, and we're going to get sidetracked, and we're going to get blindsided, and we're going to get thrown off balance. But we got the means and the formula using the method of the coaches to get plumb back up. Every time we get tore up from the flow up, we need a check up from the neck up. And we got the means and the method to do it, and it's the same method that the coaches have been using for years, reviewing films. And what we want to do is start reviewing our film on a daily basis so we can learn daily to spot, admit, and correct these character flaws. Because that's the essence of character building. Honesty is the foundation stone to good godly character. So if honesty is the foundation stone to good and godly character, dishonesty must be the foundation stone of the opposite side. So to thine own self be true. But what's going to help us stay honest with ourselves is a key word, and it's called discipline. Go to page 88 in the big book. Don't y'all review your day on a nightly deal here? You know why we review our day? So we can learn from our mistakes. If we don't learn from our mistakes, we continue to duplicate them, right? Both natures want to duplicate themselves. This old nature wants us to continue to make same old stupid mistakes over and over and over again. This side over here wants us to learn from our mistakes, wants us to capitalize on our mistakes. This side over here don't want our mistakes to take advantage of us, but it wants us to take advantage of our mistakes so that we can learn and so we can grow, so we don't have to duplicate the same old stuff we did the first half of the game, so we can learn from it, capitalize on it, and take advantage of it, and increase our skills against the strategies of the dark side versus the strategies of the light side. Does that make sense? But we need a plan. We need a program. We need a plan of action. So on page 88, it says it works, it really does. Y'all see that little short paragraph? Let me tell you what it is. It is discipline. To learn, you must love discipline. It is stupid to hate correction. Y'all believe that? And we specialized in the field of being stupid and stubborn. It talks about that on page 53 in the 12 and 12. It is from our twisted relations with family, friends, and society that many of us have suffered the most. We have been especially stupid and stubborn about the twisted relations, which means we wouldn't let go. Who wants us to have twisted relations? This side over here. Who wants us to have healthy relationships? This side over here. So when it's all said and done, and this old body is laying in that horizontal box, the big priority is going to be your relationship. And the ultimate priority is your relationship with God. And that's what this movement, or that's what these 12 steps are all about. And it tells us that on page 13, it tells us that on page 72, it tells us that at the bottom of 99 and top of 100 in the big book, and it tells us that on page 164, which is the way we will close our meeting out. But y'all stay with me right here, right now, if you will, page 88. It works, it really does. We are undisciplined. Y'all remember what we read on page 174? Great suffering and great love are our disciplinarians. We need no others. And so it says, we are undisciplined, so we let God. That's a choice. Discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. So the outline for us to be disciplined on a daily basis, I'm going to go to page 84 and we're going to kind of crawl through this outline so we can be disciplined. Now I'm going to ask y'all a question. How many of y'all have been taking personal inventory since this meeting started? How many of y'all believe it would be very beneficial for you and your people within your circle of influence if you continued to take personal inventory? How many of y'all believe it would be healthy for you if you continued to set right any new mistakes as you cleaned up the old mistakes? Y'all think that would be healthy? Yes. Well, we got the means and the method to do it, and it takes discipline to do it. So it starts with a thought in your mind. Look on page 84 where it says this thought brings us to step 10. Y'all see that? What it don't say is the first 9 steps brings us to step 10, okay? Taking personal inventory is very ancient. Self-examination is very ancient. Getting honest with yourself is very ancient. It didn't just start in 1935, and it didn't just start when this book got published. It didn't start when the 12 and 12 got published. It started way before then. Okay? So instead of taking everybody else's inventory, we need to start taking our own and start focusing on what we need to be doing or ought not be doing, instead of focusing on what others ought to be doing or ought not be doing. In other words, we need to start taking our own inventory and try to set right any new mistakes. Okay, now I'm an old boxer. I used to take boxing lessons. And you have to be trained. Okay, and if you get your guard down and you're in the prize ring, what's going to happen? Boom! You're going to get KO'd, aren't you? Are you fixing to take a lick? So we got to get our guards up. In other words, we got to be self-controlled. Page 90 and 91 in the 12 and 12 talks about self-control. It says disagreeable and unexpected problems are not the only things that cause for self-control. So we got to be self-controlled. We got to be alert. We got to know that this dark side is wanting to drag us down and it's wanting to overtake us and wants to overpower us. That's our opponent. Y'all see that? The opposition force. And so on page 84, go back to the book with me. Stay with me right here. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take, what's that next word? Personal inventory, and continue to set right any, what's that next word? New mistakes. So I'm going to make some mistakes today. I don't know if a day goes by that I don't make some mistakes, that I don't say something that I shouldn't have said, or do things that I shouldn't have done, or maybe I might have needed to say what I said, but I didn't need to say it with gritted teeth or clenched fist. Does that make sense? So it says, we vigorously commence. This is taking action. Faith without works is dead. We can vigorously commence this way of living, which is taking our own inventory and setting right any new mistakes as we go along, as we cleaned up the past. We've entered the world of the Spirit. Remember when we read on page 63, we were reborn? And when we get reborn, we enter the world of the Spirit, so we start getting into the fourth dimension of existence instead of the first three dimensions, which is the physical, the mental, and the emotional. And now we're getting into the spiritual realm. And we want the spiritual to be the lead instead of the physical. It says we've entered the world of the Spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. And if you start taking the right actions, then you'll start growing in understanding and effectiveness. But what happens is we usually try to understand something before we take the actions. So if we don't have some understanding, we won't take the actions. And that's getting everything backwards. Does that make sense? Okay? So it says, this is not an overnight matter. It continues for a lifetime. So I continue to take my personal inventory. I continue to set right any new mistakes because I'm growing in understanding and effectiveness, and it's a lifetime journey. And so now it says, continue to watch for. Here's where the defense kicks in. Continue to watch for. What's the first thing we're supposed to be watching for? Selfishness. You know why? Because it's killing us. Continue to watch for dishonesty, which is this side. Continue to watch for resentments because it's destroying us. Continue to watch for fear because it's stealing our peace of mind. When these crop up, you know where they're going to crop up? Right there in the mind. It's like the garden. It's like a garden. When these crop up, it's like weeds in the garden. If you can go out there and you can bust up a good plot of land, and you can have some good fertilizer and everything on it, and you can go out there and you can plant some tomatoes and peas and corn, and you can sit there and say, God, I pray that you to help me have a good, clean garden. And you can sit there and pray, and you can prop yourself up on the edge of a hoe handle if you want to, and say, God, I hope you help me have a good, clean garden. But if you don't take some actions and get that hoe, or get out there on your hands and knees and pull those weeds up in the garden so they can die, they're going to grow and they're going to manifest. Because they're being fed and they're being nurtured and they're being fertilized. And we're pouring water on them. Does that make sense? So continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, what's the first thing we do? We ask God at once to remove them, so we go to the power of prayer. In other words, we call on the gardener, the real gardener. Y'all got that? We discuss it with someone immediately. You know why we need to do that? Because going spiritual matters alone is highly dangerous. It's too easy for us to rationalize and self-justify with alibis and excuses, but why we acting the way we're acting because of what they did. Does that make sense? And then we make amends quickly if we've harmed anybody. And what I've learned through my experience is, if I'm selfish, if I'm dishonest, if I'm resentful, if I'm afraid, I'm subject to operate on instincts, and I'm subject to say or do something that's going to hurt somebody. And if I don't set the record straight and make amends for what I said or what I did, what I'm doing is I'm choosing to leave the bullets in the gun or the arsenal for the power of darkness. And so I want to make it right. I don't want to hurt nobody. I hurt too many people in too many different ways. My amends list is off the chart. I have no idea the depths of the people that I hurt. I don't know who a lot of them are, because I led some of their family members and some of their friends down that wrong track through the example that I set. And some of those people may be in the graveyard, some of them may be in the penitentiary, and some of them may be out there still running and gunning. I just know I did a lot of damage to a whole lot of people for too long a period of time. Did you? So instead of looking at what everybody else did to me, I started looking at how I was used and how much damage I did to everybody else. And it kept me from being a victim. And it made me become aware of the strategy of the dark side. So when these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone else immediately. We make amends quickly. In most cases, 3 out of 4 is not bad, but if we don't resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help, then that itty-bitty committee stays in up here. Does that make sense? So if we'll turn our thoughts to somebody we can help, love and tolerance of others is our code. So what happens is, when I get involved in this design for living, and I start trying to pass on what's been so freely given to me, and I get up here and I do these meetings like I do, my problems vanish in my mind. My financial insecurity vanishes because I'm not thinking about that. I'm concentrating or focusing on trying to bring a message to you that was so freely brought to me. And it helps me, and I get out of myself by getting to come up here and do what I do. I go to the meetings, I go to the feeding trough. I call it the feeding trough. There was a lot of us up here at the feeding trough last night, and we were fed. Because we sat around these tables and we partake of the bread of life. And it tastes good. And it transformed our minds. And so a lot of times we let all these other priorities keep us from coming to the tables. And what we don't even recognize, or what I didn't recognize, is I was choosing unconsciously to deprive myself of vitally needed support. I needed this nourishment. I need the atmosphere of God's grace. I need His strength. And the 12 and 12 talks about that on page 97 and 98. We're not going to go there. We don't have time. Look over there on page 85 where it says, it is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action. Okay? The spiritual program of action has already started in your life, has it not? Haven't some words been said today that's been reprogramming your mind? And so what the Spirit does is, when the words come out of my mouth, or I still start telling y'all a testimony about my own experience, then the Spirit intervenes on your behalf based on your circumstances and based on the conditions around your circumstances. How many of y'all have reflected back and looked back on different scenes in your past? We all have, haven't we? So the process has begun. Let's don't let it stop. So it is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels or past accomplishments. The temptation to slack off can win out. Don't let that tempter win out with the temptation to slack off for you not to fulfill your assignment instead of focusing on everybody else's assignment. I played linebacker. I didn't need to focus on the assignment of the defensive end. I played in. I didn't need to focus on the assignment of the offensive guard. When I played point guard, I didn't need to focus on the assignment of the forward or the center. I needed to focus on my assignment and do the best I could be. Does that make sense? Drop down 6 lines where it says, every day is a day where we must carry the vision of God's will in all our activities. Those are some more ancient words. And that vision is, how can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along these lines all we wish. It is a proper use of the will. So back up to the top of page 77. And here's what's happening to every one of y'all in a realistic world. If you put forth the right actions, you're going to get the desired results. At the very top of the page, it says, at the moment, we're trying to put our lives back in order. Y'all see that? That means we got to take the actions. If we're really trying, I wanted to be the best ball player I could be, but I wasn't real crazy about going out to the practice field. Y'all know what I'm saying? But at the moment, we're trying to put our lives back in order. Is that not a priority for you? But this is not an end of itself. Our real purpose, y'all see that? Is to spiritually fit ourselves to be a maximum service to God and the people about us, which means we are in training. And this is our training ground. Now jump over to page 86. Using the method of the coaches, reviewing our film so we can examine ourselves to see if our faith is genuine. So we can examine ourselves to see if we're really being an agent or representative for this side, or if we're really being an agent or representative for this side. And you don't want to be on this team, and deep down inside, you don't want to be on this team. Because we played on this team. We've already played on that team, haven't we? And it was a mighty high price for a low-class lifestyle, wasn't it? But we're not the only ones that paid the price. Our families paid the price, our friends paid the price, society paid the price. So it says, when we retire at night, y'all see it? We constructively review our film. Then we ask ourselves some questions so we can test ourselves. Were we resentful? Were we selfish? Were we dishonest? Were we afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving toward all? What's that next question? It's a big one. What? What could we have done better? We want to learn from our mistakes. We want to capitalize on our mistakes. We don't want to duplicate the same old behavior. We don't want to duplicate the same old conduct because it's hurting us. It's affecting us in a perverted way, and we're being used to transmit it on to our loved ones. And then it says, were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? How many of us are consumed with what about me? But what about me? Or were we thinking about what we could do for others or what we could pack into the stream of life? And here's where the dark side wants to take you when you make mistakes and you say something or do something you shouldn't do, instead of looking at it as a means for you to grow and affecting its effectiveness and understanding, he wants you to beat up on yourself. He wants you to drift. And see, that's a lot of times that's a slow process. He wants you to drift off into worry, remorse, morbid reflection, because he wants to diminish our usefulness. So we won't be near as useful over here. So we can be blocked off. Does that make sense? And then it says, after making our review on a daily basis, we ask for God's forgiveness. The implication is we're going to fall short on a consistent level and inquire upon him what corrective measures should be taken. So we're learning how to spot, admit, and correct is the way the 12 and 12 puts it on page 95. Anyway, we're not going to go there either. We don't have time. Then it says, on awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day, but before we consider our plans for the day, we ask God to do what? Direct our thinking. Didn't we make a commitment that he was going to be our director? We ask God to direct our thinking, and we ask especially that our thinking be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, self-seeking motives. Then it says, under these conditions, which is our security, our faith, under these conditions we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all God gave us brains to use, our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane, which is the plane of inspiration when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. So motives can help you differentiate between the truth and the false, or the bad spirit versus the good spirit. Does that make sense? Then it says, in thinking about our day, we may face indecisions. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here, we ask God for inspiration. So we got to go to the coach and ask God for inspiration. We ask for an intuitive thought or decision. We relax and take it easy. In other words, we take a few deep breaths. We don't struggle. We're often surprised that the right answers come after we've tried this for a while. Then for time's sake, y'all, we're bad out of time. Let's look at the bottom of page 87. As we go through the day, we stop, pause, and pray. What's that next word? When? 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 What I'm saying is we're going to get that way. You can call time out and go talk to the coach, okay? And you ask the coach for the right thought or the right action, and you constantly remind yourself that you ain't running the game. You might be a quarterback, you might be a linebacker, you might be a water boy, but you ain't running the deal. All right, jump over to page 164 and then we're going to close. We done good? We talked about these relationships. On page 164, the word you or yourself is mentioned 25 times. God is referred to 10 times on this one page. It says our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. I learned a whole lot before I was able to recognize how little I knew compared to what there is to learn. So God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Has he done that today? He has for me. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. Circle of influence, family, friends, society. Says the answers will come if your own spiritual house is in order. So what's in your spiritual house? But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. But what that means is we are transmitters. So see to it, personal responsibility, that your relationship with God is right. That's the vertical. And great events will come to pass for you and countless others. That's the horizontal. This is the great fact for us. And in the big book, it says, with hearts and minds attuned to the welfare of others, and I believe my heart is supposed to be at the crossroad on a daily basis. And it's my personal responsibility to try to keep my relationship vertical with God right. And the second one is my horizontal. And so I've enjoyed. The next paragraph says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your fault to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, capitalized, both of them. And you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. That means walk with purpose. May God bless you and keep you until we meet again. Let's circle up.